Misinformation about penis size is everywhere. Pornography, social media, locker room conversations, online forums, and even poorly designed studies that have helped create a distorted picture of what is normal. Many men think that the average erect penis is over 6 inches long. Some people assume that shoe size can predict penis size. Others believe that a smaller flaccid penis automatically means a smaller erection. And the most concerning, men with completely normal anatomy sometimes pursue pills, devices, injections, or surgery because they believe something is wrong with them. But when researchers actually measured thousands of men, the numbers tell a very different story. Hi, I'm Dr. Lamia Gabal, and today we're going to separate 10 penis-sized myths from what the medical evidence actually shows. And we'll start with the number that surprises many men. Number 1 out of 10, the average erect penis is about 5.2 inches long. One of the most widely cited scientific analyses of penis size was published in the British Journal of Urology International. Researchers systematically reviewed studies involving as many as 15,521 men and constructed what are called nomograms. Essentially, reference charts showing penile measurements are distributed across a population. The average erect length was approximately 13.1 centimeters, or about 5.2 inches. Average stretch length was remarkably similar at approximately 13.2 centimeters. That's important because many men believe the average is 6 inches or even considerably larger. So where did that idea come from? Part of the problem is how penis size has historically been studied. If researchers ask men to measure themselves and report the number, they may get a very different result than when a clinician performs a standardized measurement. And that brings us to the second major misconception. Self-reported measurements tend to make the average look larger. Some studies based on self-measurement have reported average erect lengths above 6 inches. But there are several problems with relying exclusively on those numbers. First, there's volunteer bias. Men who are comfortable participating in a study about penis size may not represent the average male population. Second, there can be social desirability bias. People do not always report sensitive information accurately, particularly when the subject is associated with masculinity, sexuality, or self-esteem. And third, measurement technique matters. Where exactly do you start measuring? Do you press into the fat pad above the penis? Is the penis completely erect? Is the ruler positioned correctly? Small differences in technique can change the result. And that's why professionally measured data are generally more useful when we are trying to establish population averages. The third myth about penis size is about average girth. Length receives most of the attention, but penis circumference is another measurement researchers have looked at. In the large BJU International Review, average erect circumference was approximately 11.7 centimeters or about 4.6 inches. Another American study involving over 1,600 sexually active men who measured themselves found an average erect circumference of approximately 12.2 centimeters or 4.8 inches. Interestingly, circumference appears to cluster within a somewhat narrower range than length, but once again, averages are not thresholds separating normal from abnormal. Human anatomy exists across a distribution, and this is where understanding statistics becomes extremely useful. Fact number 4 is that penis size follows a bell curve. Think about height. If the average adult male height in a population is around a particular number, that does not mean every normal man should be exactly that height. Some men are shorter, some are taller. Most cluster somewhere around the middle, and penis size really works the same way. Researchers have created nomograms precisely because there is substantial normal variation. Being below the average does not automatically mean that someone has an abnormally small penis, and being above the average does not necessarily confer any medical or sexual advantage. Yet many men who are completely within the normal range still believe they're unusually small. Why? Because the comparison group in their head may bear very little resemblance to the general population. Pornography can dramatically distort perceptions of normal. Pornography is not a random sample of the male population. Performers may be selected partly because of unusual physical characteristics and camera angles and perspective and grooming and other production techniques that can further influence perception. If someone repeatedly sees unusually large penises presented as ordinary, his internal definition of average can gradually change. Research examining men's perceptions of penile size has found that men frequently overestimate what is typical. Qualitative research has also identified pornography, media imagery, comments from partners, and comparison with other men as factors influencing men's concerns about their own bodies. There's another problem with locker room comparisons. You're usually comparing flaccid penises, and flaccid size is particularly misleading. Fact 6 is that a smaller flaccid penis does not necessarily mean a smaller erection. This is one of the most persistent myths. Flaccid penile length is highly variable. Temperature matters, stress matters, sympathetic nervous system activity matters. The environment matters. The relationship between flaccid size and erect size is not strong enough to reliably look at a man's flaccid penis and predict his erect length. You've probably heard people describe informally as growers and showers, and there is some physiological truth behind that concept. Different penises undergo different degrees of expansion during erection. A penis that appears relatively small while flaccid can increase substantially during erection, while another that's larger while flaccid may undergo a smaller proportional change. So comparing flaccid size tells you much less than most people think. And while we're discussing predictions, we should address one of the oldest myths. Fact 7 is that shoe size does not tell you penis size. The idea that men with larger feet have larger penises has been repeated for decades. But when researchers have actually examined anthropometric measurements, the relationship between foot length and penile length has generally been low or non-existent. A prospective study involving 800 men specifically evaluated penile measurements alongside other body dimensions. Foot size was not a useful predictor. So you cannot reliably look at someone's shoes and determine what's happening underneath his clothing. What about height? There is slightly more evidence there, but not enough to make useful predictions. Fact 8, being tall does not help much. Taller men may have a slightly larger penis size on average, but height cannot predict a person's penis size. Multiple studies have investigated whether height correlates with penile length. Some have found weak to modest associations. In other words, taller men on average have slightly greater penile measurements, but the correlation is far too weak to look at a particular man and accurately predict his penis size based on his height. Two men who are exactly the same height can have substantially different anatomy. Body weight creates another interesting issue. Higher body mass index has been associated in some research with shorter apparent penile length. Notice that I said apparent length. In men carrying more fat in the lower abdomen and suprapubic region, part of the penile shaft can become obscured by the surrounding fat pad. The underlying penile anatomy has not necessarily become dramatically shorter. Less of the shaft is simply externally visible. Significant weight loss can therefore sometimes make more of the shaft visible without actually changing the anatomical length of the penis itself. Fact 9, and one of the most important, this is that men seeking penile enlargement do not have medically abnormal penises. This may be the most important point in this entire discussion. Studies examining men who pursue penile enlargement repeatedly find that many are already within normal anatomical ranges. Their concern is real, but the perceived anatomical defect frequently is not. That distinction matters because dissatisfaction can push otherwise healthy men towards interventions that do carry some genuine risks. The American Urological Association has warned about certain penile augmentation procedures. Surgical lengthening, fat injection, fillers, and other interventions can potentially result in complications such as scarring, deformity, infection, dissatisfaction, changes in sensation, or problems with erectile function, depending on the procedure and, quite frankly, depending on who's performing it. There's an entire marketplace of pills, creams, supplements, extenders, pumps, and other products that make claims that often exceed the quality of the scientific evidence behind them. So before pursuing an invasive intervention, a man should first have an objective evaluation and understand where his measurements actually fall compared with validated reference data. For many patients, that conversation itself can be extremely reassuring. And fact 10, and this is supported by science, most men do not just misunderstand penis size, they also misunderstand sexual performance too. A 2026 review in the Asian Journal of Andrology examined men's understanding of normal penile length and sexual function. The broader problem was striking. Men can have inaccurate expectations not only about anatomy, but also about intercourse duration, erectile function, ejaculation, and what constitutes sexual dysfunction. That means a man may believe he has an anatomical or sexual problem when his experience actually falls within normal human variation. And the internet can amplify this. If your reference point is pornography, edited social media, exaggerated personal stories, advertising for sexual performance products or anonymous online discussions, you're not comparing yourself with a representative population. You're comparing yourself with a highly selected version of reality. So what should men actually know? The clinician measured average erect penis is approximately 5.2 inches long, not the 6+ inches many men imagine. Average erect circumference is roughly 4.6 to 4.8 inches, depending on the study and the measurement. Flaccid size is a poor way to predict erect size. Shoe size does not meaningfully predict penis size. Height has, at most, a limited relationship that is not useful for predicting an individual man's measurements. Higher body fat can make the penis appear shorter because part of the shaft may be obscured. And perhaps most importantly, there's a broad range of normal. If you're worried about your size, the answer is not to compare yourself with pornography or strangers on the internet. The appropriate comparison is with properly collected medical data. And if the concern is causing significant anxiety, affecting relationships, interfering with sexual function, or making you consider surgery or unregulated enlargement products, talk to a qualified urologist before doing anything irreversible. Because one of the most consistent findings in this research is surprisingly simple. A large percentage of men worried about having an abnormally small penis are actually anatomically normal. Sometimes the most effective intervention isn't changing the penis, it's correcting the misinformation about what normal actually looks like. I'm Dr. Lamia Gabal. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more evidence-based discussions about men's health, sexual health, and the medical questions people are often too embarrassed to ask.